is Julia Argueta. I'm from Southern California, and this is my story. So I grew up in a Christian household, and my parents were coming to know Jesus on a deeper and more personal level when I was super young. So they'd always poured into me, but even just seeing their walk with the Lord kind of inspired me in my own walk. But yeah, they always pushed me towards Christ in everything. The first response was always to pray. I remember I struggled with really bad anxiety when I was younger, and my dad would literally lay down and at the foot of my bed, and he would read Matthew 26 over me until I fell asleep. And he was like, the Lord literally takes care of the birds and the flowers. Why? You are one of his most prized possessions. Why are you gonna worry? So yeah. Okay, so I accepted Jesus when I was probably around 8 years old. But being 8 years old, I didn't understand the depth of what it meant to walk with Christ through life, obviously. So I went to a summer camp called Awaken Weekend, and it was a kids camp, and I think I was maybe 11 or 12, maybe even younger. But it was at Vanguard, and I remember we literally stayed in towers, which is crazy. But I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit for the first time, and I remember we were worshiping, and it was the song Set Afire, and I was just sobbing, and I didn't know why, and I felt super it literally felt like a hug. I don't know how else to describe it. And it was super sweet, and it was super pure, because I think it wasn't something that I knew of, so it was super organic. And yeah, and then I heard the voice of the Lord for the first time while I was worshiping, and he was like, this is what you were made to do. So yeah, and then I was like, wow, this guy's kind of cool. He's my best friend. So yeah, okay. So I had known about Vanguard since I was super young, but when I was thinking about colleges, I wanted to go super, super far and somewhere that was not a Christian university. And I had gone to private school up until 8th grade. And so I was just I've had the Christian school experience. I'm good, I'm okay. And so I want to say it was my senior year, and I'd been talking about going to New York. I was oh, I'm going to go to college in New York. That's where I'm going to go. That's the place for me. And fun fact, it wasn't, because Jesus said so. But basically, my friend sent me the application, because I was starting to apply to colleges. She was like, hey, I think you should do this. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go to Vanguard. This is the one place that I don't want to go. And I remember, I think my parents asked me about colleges, and they were like, oh, where do you want to go? And I was like, I just want to go somewhere in New York, and the two places I don't want to go are APU and Vanguard. And so she sends me the application. I don't do it, but I'm sitting there, and it's super late at night, and I'm just you know what? I'm just gonna apply and see what happens. So the way that Vanguard has their application, they say hey, we'll let you know in 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks rolls around. I'm meeting with my advisor about college admissions, and she's like, hey, have you heard anything from Vanguard? And I was like, fun fact, I haven't. And she's constantly checking in, hey, have you heard anything from these schools? Have you heard anything from these schools? And I was like, no, I haven't. Actually, I think at that point I had only applied to Vanguard because it was super early on in the semester. And she was like, okay, and a month goes by at this point, and I'm like, well, I'm cooked. I'm not getting into Vanguard, because I don't want to at this point, right? And so, but secretly I do. But I can't tell anybody that yet. So basically, my counselor called me, and she's like, okay, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna call the admissions office and just ask if you got in. And I was like, I didn't know that we could do that, but okay. So I have my tour set up for Friday. And I remember we called the admissions office. They were like, oh, we're not sure yet. And I was like, okay. And they were like, but you have your tour scheduled on that Friday. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, okay, well, we'll see you then. And I was like, okay, cool. So I was praying about it, because I felt a tug towards Vanguard, but I still did not want to go to Vanguard. But I still felt it was super weird. So I'm just like praying about it, and the Lord tells me to fast. So I do for that week. And it was really awesome sauce because I just got to be with the Lord in a super sweet and intimate way and kind of like sacrifice my own desires for like the plan that He had for me. And so we go to our tour, and my mom and I go, and I remember walking on campus and I was like, dang it, because I feel like this like wave of just like peace wash over me, and I was like, this already feels like home. But at this point, I haven't been accepted yet, so I don't want to get too attached. So I'm like panicking. My mom has a picture, like she took a selfie, and I was so in my head, like I'm not smiling in this picture. And you can just see like the panic in my face because I'm like, I haven't been accepted yet, but like I feel like so much peace about this campus. Like I feel at home on this campus. So we go into Needham Chapel. And that just like amplifies it by 10 because we walk into Needham Chapel, which is like already, again, like I'm anxious, but also feeling at peace. But I'm anxious because I'm like, well, what if I don't get in? Because I already love it here so much. So then I'm sitting there and I start praying. I'm like, okay, Lord, like if I get accepted within this week, again, it had been a month at this point. They originally said like, we'll let you know in 2 weeks. They were like, or I was like, okay, Lord, like if I get accepted within this week, like I won't apply anywhere else. Like I'll go here and I'll like completely like let every other like desire that I had go. So then the guy that's like telling everybody about like everything that Vanguard has to offer, he's like, he says, okay, how many of you guys have applied to Vanguard? And so I raised my hand, and then he goes, okay, well, how many of you guys have been accepted? So I put my hand down. It was low-key mega awkward, but it's okay. And then he goes, okay, well, there are a few names that I want to read off of people in this room who have just been accepted to Vanguard. And there are 3 like cards that he pulls out. Mind you, there are like 20 students in this room at this point. And like half of them have applied and like gotten accepted. And so he reads 3 names, and my name was the last one. And so then they walk in with my acceptance letter and a scholarship that I didn't even apply for, and like all of this stuff. And I was like, bruh. And I literally like am sitting there shocked, and I'm like, bro. Like he was like, oh, so you're submitting this to me? Okay. And then he delivered. And so basically then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to Vanguard now. So, and then, yeah, and then the whole process was super great because, like, the Lord's hand was super evident in, like, housing and, like, just, like, any financial things, like, the Lord fully met and, like, all of that stuff. So, yeah, so now I'm here. Okay. So, I originally came to Vanguard as a worship leadership major. And so, throwback, when I was at that camp and the Lord was like, this is what you were made to do. I was like, worship, got it, doing that forever. And like, don't get me wrong, like the Lord has like used that and like used worship in such like an amazing way in my life. But it was so much so that I was putting my identity in it. And so coming to Vanguard, I was like, oh, like I'm going to be a worship leader. Like this is so great. Like I have it all figured out and like that kind of thing. And so then, I'm a worship leadership major. I like have done worship for years at my church. Like the Lord has given me like prophetic words about this. Like it's crazy. And all of this stuff. Like I'm at Vanguard, which is I'm like, wow, like I'm going to do like worship and it's going to be great. So I go out for the worship team and I don't get on. And this was devastating. Hindsight, it's actually not that serious. But like in that moment, I was like, what? I was like, but I'm doing everything that the Lord asked me to. Like, I'm here as a worship leadership major. Like let a girl just worship. Oh my goodness. And so it was like I kept saying like, oh, like this is just my pruning season. This is just my waiting season. Like I'm just like the Lord put me on the bench, but like this is my desert season. Like He'll put me out, bro. It was not. It was actually probably one of my favorite seasons of my entire life because it was really sweet because the Lord took my identity as like a worship leader. And I think in that way, it was very much like, oh, like this is what I can offer. This is what I can give. This is how I serve. And that is what made me like desirable to the Lord, which is not true. And so basically I like got sat down by the Lord, and it was very much like, hey, like you're a daughter before you're a worship leader, and like I love you because you exist type thing, not because I can do anything, because I literally like there's nothing that I can do to earn okay remix, there's nothing I can do to earn the love of the Father, like genuinely nothing. And so yeah, so it was really cool. So I stayed a worship leadership major until the end of my freshman year. And then I started feeling super antsy about it. And I was like, this is weird. Like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. And so going back to that whole identity thing, this was kind of like the last puzzle piece almost to that kind of lesson that the Lord was teaching me. Where I like no longer felt peace about being a worship leadership major, and the Lord called me out of it. And he called me out of it before he told me what I was gonna do instead. So this was like the first time in my life where I was like, I literally have no idea like what my future is gonna look like. So yeah, so I like stopped, like I met with my advisor. I was no longer a worship leadership major, and I was just kind of sitting in this weird like limbo of like, what do I do? Like I can't plan classes, like it was really strange. And so I was praying about it one night, and I was like, okay, and like communications started coming up a lot, and I was like, weird, because like I don't know, it was just very consistent. And I was like, oh, like that's super interesting, and it was something that I was kind of like drawn to a little bit. And so I like started looking into it more, and I was like, wow, like this is something that I could like totally see myself doing. And as I was praying about it, the Lord gave me 2 words in like regards to communication, which was advocate and like bridge. So I didn't know what to do with that. But I was just like, okay. But I was very, very cautious because I didn't want to like misstep or like jump into anything immediately, as I had done with like worship leadership. And so I'd applied for an internship at my church. Shout out Hearts on Fire. And so I'm sitting there, and like again, I've done worship at my church like this entire time. So I was like low-key expecting to get an internship that was like kind of adjacent to like the worship like internship that they offered. And like randomly they were like, hey, you know how you've never like done any social media or like touched any websites or like done anything communications related? Yeah, that's where we're gonna put you. Mind you, I had been praying about this for like a month at that point, and I was like, bro, what the heck? So I do like my first week, absolutely fall in love with it. I'm like helping them reorganize their website. I'm helping with like posters and like designing stuff for Instagram and like all this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So basically I love this. So I like meet with my advisor. I changed my major to communications. And then when I got here, because I was super torn between PR and communications. And then when I got here, they decided to open up a new major, which was, I was torn between PR and marketing, sorry. And then when I got here, they decided to open up a new major, which was PR and digital marketing. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So now I'm doing that, and it's been really great. And it's really funny because I like see like little things that I was super passionate about that I didn't know that I was super passionate about, kind of like being molded through that major. Like I love editing, I love photography, I love, you know, being super like intentional with people and like meeting people where they're at and like just like that kind of thing. And like seeing how the Lord has used that, like even before I knew that those were like super important to me, and seeing like where he brought me without me even knowing that I was gonna fall in love with it the way that I do. So yeah. Okay, so one piece of encouragement that I would give anybody watching this is putting your identity in the Lord is probably the most successful, smart, amazing, bestest ever, most awesome thing that you can do, because then you won't find your worth in things like, what you can bring to others, relationships, friendships, grades. Grades are important, but like putting your worth in them is probably not good. And just like that kind of thing. Because we're never going to be perfect, and we're never going to be enough, or there's always going to be somebody better. But what's really sweet about putting your identity as the Lord is He calls you chosen, He calls you washed, He calls you created in His image, and there's honestly nothing better than that. And He's the best, and He will be your best friend. So yeah.